Today I'm joined by someone really special to me that I've been really excited to chat with. That is Barbara Strain. Barbara has spent her entire career helping hospitals make smarter supply chain and value analysis decisions, always with such a thoughtful approach that keeps clinicians and patients at the center of each and every decision. And why this is so special for me is before she moved into consulting, she actually led supply strategy at the University of Virginia Health System. And not only am I biased because anyone with a UVA background is automatically on the highest of highest in my mind, but also she is the first supply chain executive I ever got to know when I started Care+Wear, and the first person that placed a large PO with us. So, Barbara, I'm really glad you're here. I'm even more glad that you were at UVA at that time. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Chet, I really appreciate it. You and I have touched base off and on over the last like 10 years or so for whatever reason, and you're also special. And it was a privilege to be asked to be on today. Thank you.
Awesome. So I think let's just dive right in. In your work, you've seen firsthand how supply chain decisions ripple all the way to the patient or clinician. What's one moment where thoughtful sourcing truly made a difference in the care experience?
So it's really kind of a big question, and I'll try to keep it to a couple succinct little answers.
Yeah.
My first thing is just for the audience, I did start in 1997 in supply chain and value analysis. Before that, I was in the laboratory and did a lot of things. So I've worn a few
Every
hats in
hat.
my
Yeah.
day, pretty much a lot of hats
Yeah.
doing all this. But the first thing that we really started doing was sharing actual purchase history, which sort of uh, looks like utilization in a way, to
Mhm.
nursing managers and nursing unit nurses and departments so they could see here's what I'm really buying and here's what I really use a lot of and things. So that they were able to look at why do we stock this? I don't remember this ever being important. So it was the visibility into data. Another really good example was when a patient was transferred from one unit to another, sort of like a
Mhm.
step down situation. They said the other unit used a product on my hair to try to keep it clean and things. But I noticed that you don't have it here. So this was early in the days
Mm.
of one unit saying, "Ooh, I found this and I'm gonna
Yeah.
buy it
I'm
and
gonna
we're gonna
use it.
use it."
Yeah.
So it's that patient input that's really important as well. And the third thing, so someone once said, I'm going to keep it to threes, and I
Hmm.
believe it was you, but anyway, I'm going to keep it
Uh-oh.
to threes. And the other thing is when we started working on a big Kanban inventory management system,
Yeah.
we would sit down with two or three from the supply chain, including value analysis, and then we'd sit down with two or three people from each nursing unit and go through their whole list. And they didn't know why this was there. Could
Hmm.
we have something else? And then we'd be able to tell them, well, this product already exists. So it was really an awareness of they didn't understand why things were in their units
Yeah.
and they didn't know who requested things and what did we really have. So we really launched into a lot of direct contact and really integrating with the nursing units and what they really needed and try to develop something pretty standard across the board in like med surg supplies. And if you're going to draw blood, you should have these things. If you're going to put in a catheter, all those sorts of things were we kind of standardized with all of their blessing depending on their patient type.
Yeah.
And then we put them together into categories that were visible by either color coding or some other way so that they didn't have to look through every bin. They could just look in a section. So if you're looking in a red section, you're looking for things having to do with blood.
Yeah.
You kind of get the sense of things. But those are kind of the ways that directly affect that care. And so that if the caregiver is more confident and understand and know, then the care is going to be more confident to the patient.
I love that. And I think two things that you really brought out there. Well, first and foremost, communication, right? Like streamlining the communication and making sure that everyone is aware and knows, like you said, you listen to the patients and you're able to incorporate their feedback. And then the clinical team, half the time they didn't even know what others are using or what they're using sometimes. And so letting them know what they have and making sure that what they have is what they want to have. Um, when you think about looking at new partners, what helps you distinguish someone as someone who's just a vendor from someone who you view as a long-term strategic partner?
That's really critical these days. And all of my supply chain and value analysis people are really talking about how do we build partnerships and relationships. We don't
Yeah.
just want one-offs and it's like, buy my new widget and, all those sorts of things. One of the key things, and you mentioned it when you were summarizing what I said before, is each party listens to each other
Hmm.
and really tries to delve into how do you practice care here and how does the care around my particular product or equipment or service might interact with you. And what do you do today? And both parties are listening to each other. And who's doing the work here? What is it? How is it being done? So you're looking at a true current situation and what could a future situation look like? And how do you really stack up in that? The other thing is someone who follows up, but not too often,
Yeah.
but follows up, in a very creative way, but also does little check-ins. If we onboard a product, are they checking in with, some of the end users and things, how it's going? And they're always bringing various solutions and ideas the more they learn about the organization
Mm.
as well and said, I ran across something that you might be interested in that maybe helps, this unit or this
Yeah.
patient type or whatever. Would you be interested in it? But it's always keeping us in mind by knowing and understanding who the facility is. And then it also gives the facility a glimpse into the company
Yeah.
that individual works for and knowing that when we get in a bind or we need to know and understand something, we can ask, and they
Yeah.
help to solve various issues and things.
I love that. It reminds me, even from as early as my consulting career, how important it was to just interact with people and like share new, like I read the Wall Street Journal. I love reading the Wall Street Journal. It's something I've done since UVA. If I see something relevant to you, why shouldn't, like, I should be sending it to you. And to your point, that then lets you know, hey, this is someone that cares about me, not just someone who wants me to buy my product. And it's funny because oftentimes when you show someone you care, they would rather work with you than someone else, all other things being equal. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. Um, I guess kind of thinking about that to one step further. So cost always matters, but value is obviously more than just a number on a paper. How do you evaluate durability or long-term outcomes when assessing products like things like gowns and linens?
Gowns and linen. So one of the hats I wore for about 7 years was directing linen services.
Hmm.
A lot of times, supply chain isn't just a product that gets bought and put on a shelf.
Right.
Sometimes you're doing mail services or equipment distribution or linen services. So I was helping out directing linen services. And so I learned a lot about all the regulatory that goes with it, the infection control that goes with it, whether you outsource it or insource it, all of those sorts of things. But mostly, why do we actually have the linens and the gowns and blankets and patient wear and other things that we have? Because you have to look at the whole cost of ownership.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that it's not something that, here's what I always thought about
Hmm.
is I have certain sheets, certain pillowcases, certain things I wear or my family wears to bed and
Yeah.
everything, and I got that creature comfort, right?
Right.
Well, when you get from that one night and then you get into the hospital as an admit, how does that really feel? And it's
Right.
hard to make everybody happy. But if you have something not of good quality or not sort of, I call it sort of the patient seal approval.
Yeah.
So when we would look at either new outsourcing companies or look at it's time to look at replacing linens or whatever, we had patients touch and feel, nurses touch and feel from all the service line. So peds are really important because they can't wear big things, they'll
Right.
trip and things,
Yeah.
but they also have a propensity to do, pull
Pull
things
everything.
or
Yeah.
yeah, or bite them or whatever. So you have to cater for all of that, but keep the costs in mind, just like hotels or anyone else
Right.
does, right? You can't under and make things so thin and stuff that they don't last long and they rag out and all those sorts of things. So you're constantly replacing stuff. You
Yeah.
know what the number one thing we used to replace every year, the highest amount were washcloths.
Yep.
And that's because everybody grabbed one to clean up a mess, or
Yeah.
they grabbed one to do something else with, take something off a wall.
Right.
So we went through them and constantly buying them. And so you have to get down to the data and why and all those sorts of things. So there's a lot that goes into it, especially in the specialty areas like oncology and others that have so many lines or other factors that are going on.
Yeah. No, and I think to your point, a lot of these items are things that kind of people might think is a small little item or small little decision, but obviously when you're using it a lot, when you're going through something that you're worried about durability, kind of clinical access. I know with our onesies, for example, at UVA, not just were they cute, but they provided all the clinical access that the NICU needed for them to be able to get to the baby at all times, leave the baby plugged in, etc. And so that was super important. And I think that
And
goes back to, yep,
another thing I just thought of
mhm,
is in HCAP scores
yep,
that are really important.
right,
One of those things, patient satisfaction.
yeah,
And when you think about it, how they're comfortable in their hospital situation, it's noise level, it's what they're wearing, how they're, sleeping. It's always sharpness of needles, all kinds of things that can go right back to a supply that we can help with and coordinate with on that patient satisfaction piece as well.
no, exactly. And that's been what we're obviously focused on as a company is how do you drive patient satisfaction and clinical satisfaction, but do it at less of a cost for the health system. When you think about innovation, obviously it's a huge discussion topic in healthcare. Sometimes the hardest part is getting that new product or idea to completion across the finish line. What's one example where the right alignment made adoption possible, even if the making the switch was really tough?
So I had a lot of examples to sort of think about, and
Hmm.
there's one in most a lot of different situations, but beginning in about 2014 or 15, there was a lot of new technology just started coming very
Hmm.
fast at people. So some people took the sort of path of, why am I going to look at something new? We're doing fine and all that sort of thing. So value analysis looks at it in a way as, well, is this going to help some sort of a quality indicator? Is it going to help a patient outcome, meaning they'll get out of the hospital sooner, or they're going to have a better outcome altogether so that they don't have to come back into the hospital? So we look at a variety of things. And so I got exposed through all of the value analysis processes and teams that we had, some very, very interesting that made a lot of difference, but they actually cost more than
Mm,
anything we were doing. And so what I always like to tell people and keep emphasizing is you have to look at overall value, not just the widget to widget cost, like you
right.
said. Um, One of the things that made a big difference was surgical ophthalmology came to us and said, glaucoma is a really bad disease,
Yeah.
and patients have a hard time and they have to have expensive eye drops and other drugs. And they have to come in sometimes for repeated little surgeries to relieve the pressure in their eyes and things. So we had an ophthalmologist who came to us, to the surgical team, and said, there's a new product out there that if I use this product, it'll help with the draining all of the time. And they won't have to be on very expensive drugs or come back in for resurgeries. And so we went through the whole thing, and it was an amazing, story. And so we approved it, and we said we're going to do like a long 1 year evaluation, but it's really you buy it for a year or whatever, because
Yeah.
sometimes you don't have a lot of cases. But it made such a difference. But they all had to get used to, oh, I don't bring the patient back in. I have to monitor them differently and things. So that's just one. But I will go back to your product because you
Uh-oh.
started sort of a what I call a revolution,
Yeah.
because not only was it the product, it
Yeah.
was the PICC line covers, but it was a bright color that nobody else was using, and you could visualize. And so it was an immediate visualization. Hey, there's a PICC line here. I need to draw blood from a different arm, or I need to watch this for infiltrates and things like that.
Mm,
So it was a low cost but high value
yeah.
product. So just kind of bringing it in. I didn't do this to have a commercial for
No, I love
Care+Wear,
it.
but it was a great example of something that wasn't hard to implement,
Yeah.
but it was a hard concept to get across because
Right.
it was, wait a minute, this is really simple. What's the catch,
Yeah.
right? In a way like that. But I have lots of stories like that, but I thought I'd tell those two.
No, I love that. And I think kind of what you're implying and demonstrating is just how important, especially from a company side, it is to implement it in lockstep with not just the clinicians, patients, and leadership, but in particular with supply chain, because oftentimes you all will actually think of things that we aren't even thinking about as to, hey, this is something that makes sense or why. Like when I was pitching the PICC line covers, I was pitching, you can see the infection, you can see you can have an advertisement for the hospital, but I never was promoting, oh, and by the way, you can tell where the pic's placed so you know the visualization like you're talking about. And so I think that that's really, really important. All right, so to your power of three, in 3 words, how would you describe the future of the healthcare supply chain and why are you picking those three?
Well, as you can tell, it's really hard for me to come up with just one or two words. So
Yeah.
I actually worked on this in my head and wrote down a few things, and I finally came up with this.
Hmm.
I came up integrating overall value.
Love
And the
that.
reason why I did that is because the 3 words mean so many different things, but I thought supply chain integrating with clinical and non-clinical departments to create overall value, to use all the steps that we do in value analysis, to use the right contracting, to be cognizant of what the customer, which is your internal customer, really needs to do what they need to do, and to be aware of what actually is value and how do you define that in your organization. So that's how I kind of came up with it to sort of capture that integrating overall value in what we
Love
need to
that.
do all the time.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so now I like to go in the quick fire,
Uh-oh, okay.
completely off topic. I guess first and foremost, favorite restaurant in Charlottesville.
Orzo,
Love Orzo, great spot.
yes.
What's a book that you've read recently that inspired you?
I'm going to be really transparent. I've gotten so away from actually reading books, but the book that has stuck with you the most that isn't new,
Yeah.
but it keeps going around is a story. It's not a story, it's not fiction, it's true. It's called Stories That Stick by
Huh.
Kendra Hall.
Okay.
And it's only about, it's a short book, doesn't
Yeah.
take long, but it's sitting right here on my shelf.
Love
And
that.
I take it out a lot. And
Yeah.
she's such a great storyteller, but she's also a keynote speaker and she
Mm.
lives in New York.
Interesting. I'll have to look her
Yeah.
up.
So I'm on
Um,
her Facebook page or LinkedIn page, everything Kendra. So
Love that.
very impressive.
What is a TV show that you've been binging recently?
We just finished the morning show.
Oh, so good.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah.
And finally, since we're in the holiday season, what is your favorite tradition during the holiday season?
Well, I'm Portuguese,
Hmm.
full-blooded, and it goes all the way back to Azores in Portugal in the 1800s or so. So I make all my grandmother's favorite things that she would make for us on Christmas Eve. And so I
Oh,
have
I love
kept up
that.
that tradition. So I just made sure I made all my special orders. I went through the stores and bought everything. And so my family is going to be not disappointed at
Yeah,
all that I'm keeping this up. So,
I love that. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for participating. It's obviously been one of the highlights of my life, not only to first have met you, but to get to stay in touch and continue to learn from you each and every time. And so grateful for you to taking the time today to speak with us.
well, thanks again, and we'll keep in touch for sure.
Perfect.